And customers can be redefined, and I talk about this a little later, but right now I like to invite for a conversation, invite Badr Khusnood, who's also the owner of and co-founder partner of Bremers, the huge data company, to talk to Dr. Umar Saif, who's chairman of the Punjab Board of Information Technology and also the vice chancellor of International Technology University known as ITU. And the topic is rethinking human resources in VUCA world. So please put your hands together and welcome these two wonderful exponents of technology.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी और अस्सलाम वालेकुम इस साइड पे भी आज असफर ने हमें सेंटर स्टेज कर दिया, which is very very difficult.
Oh no, this is super awkward by the way, you should know. So not a good idea, Asfar.
So लग रहा है हम किसी कटहरे में खड़े हैं, which is in reality true. So thank you so much, Max. डॉक्टर साहब आपकी तरफ आता हूँ. क्विकली स्पीकिंग आज हमने सुबह से दो तीन चीज़ें जो दो तीन क्विक अंडरस्टैंडिंग, सो वो का भी ऑल अंडरस्टैंड कि हम क्या कर रहे हैं, क्या हो रहा है. आई एम सॉरी कुछ लोग मेरे पीछे वाली साइड पे हैं, बट आई होप यू आर लिसनिंग क्लियरली. मैक्स ने बात की, फिर उसके बाद आपने बात की, फातिमा ने बात की, फिर डॉक्टर वकार ने बात की. आई थिंक व्हाट वी आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज़ कि कैसे डेटा और technology is playing a key role in helping organizations cope with the VUCA times. So VUCA we understand, I think हमें term सबको पता है, but इसकी थोड़ी सी background is military. So it comes from a military background where VUCA is in real time the biggest challenge. It's vulnerable, it's uncertain, it's ambiguous. So I think that is critically important कि इसकी पाकिस्तान में आज हम कैसे बात कर रहे हैं. फातिमा आपने बात की बिग डेटा की, आपने बात की आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की. सो डॉक्टर साहब से अभी उस पर भी ओपिनियन ले मैं लेता हूँ कि क्या हो रहा है. सो डॉक्टर साहब अगर आप थोड़ी सी एक पहले इंट्रोडक्शन मैक्स ने करवाई है, अगर थोड़ी सी और डिटेल बता सकें कि आप क्या कर रहे हैं, PITB एग्जैक्टली क्या कर रहा है, आप इंडिविजुअली कैसे आपने PITB को स्केल किया इन द लास्ट फ्यू ईयर्स और किन किन डायरेक्शंस में जा रहे हैं. देन विल गेट इनटू फ्यू इंटरेस्टिंग कॉन्वर्सेशंस. और सॉरी एक और चीज़ ऐड कर दूँ, वी विल ओपन अप फॉर Q&A एज वेल ताकि आप लोग एंगेज हो सकें. सो डॉक्टर साहब क्योंकि ITU के इंट्रोडक्शन से आए हैं तो वो अपना टीचर वाली हैट पहनेंगे और अगर किसी ने सवाल ना पूछा तो वो सवाल पूछेंगे. सो होपफुली आई थिंक वील हैव फ्यू क्वेश्चंस.
Very good. One, I want to thank Asfar that for inviting me. I've run out of all my brownie points with him. I've bailed out on him for about 4 times now, I think, on various occasions, and at times just 2 hours before the conference. So I do apologize. I'm glad I could come here today. We have a running joke that the universe conspires to keep us from attending his conferences. But my good friend is also here. He seems to have a lot of time on his hands. So someone needs to do better HR management in the federal cabinet right now. He's always at your conferences, and I can barely make to any one of those. But thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm so glad that I could be here, even though it looks like a boxing ring at this point, surrounded by all sorts of people.
मगर आज हम पॉलिटिक्स की बात नहीं करेंगे, so don't worry.
No, very good. No, I'm also not political at all. But I do various things. I actually work with 5 different kinds of people in any given day. I work with students. I work with professors. I work with programmers, people who write code. I work with civil servants, and I work with politicians. And these are 5 very distinct kind of people. They all have very different flavors to what drives them, what scares them, what motivates them, what makes them get work done, and what instruments you can use to punish them, if that's the right word. So these are very distinct kind of people, and I have to almost every day navigate between 5 different worlds. You can ask me questions about any one of these 5. I think the ones that I enjoy interacting with most are my students or professors, or what you could call entrepreneurs. We run these very large entrepreneurship programs also. I'm a big believer of that. That's typically the highlight of my day when I spend my time with such people. They're driven, self-driven, motivated, and want to change their lives and lives of their families and eventually the lives of everyone who live in this country. So they are a delight to meet with. The low point of my day typically is meeting with lowest rungs of bureaucracy. And I think any HR principles that were discussed today, none of them are applied in managing them. In fact, we do, I think, exactly the opposite. They're underpaid, have no longevity of tenure. They have permanency of job, so they have security of job. If they do anything out of the box, they'll most likely get into trouble because they have to face audits, etc. They get promoted without any semblance of performance. And they've been persecuted from time to time as the governments have moved between political governments and between military regimes and political governments. So they sort of therefore work in an environment which I just cannot seem to decipher at all. If you and I had to go and work in that environment on a 40,000 rupees salary, being a deputy commissioner of an entire bloody district with unlimited powers, and a very fickle nature of their job, which means they are one notification away from being from a deputy commissioner of a district to nobody in 3 minutes, right? So that's a very, that's just not an environment which is structured for performance. So that's typically my low point in the day. So you can ask me now questions. I don't want to answer questions, but politicians, Musaddiq will do it. Where is Musaddiq? Musaddiq conversation सुन के काट चाय की Yes, no, very good. Good idea, Musaddiq.
So we'll start on a positive note. कि जो half full glass है, which is actually majority of Pakistan, which is 70% of our population, which is youth. So putting you in one of your roles, जो आपका PITB का as chairman PITB role है, कि आप कैसे पंजाब और in specific and Pakistan in general कि youth को with this disruption जो फातिमा ने भी highlight की, वकार साहब ने भी highlight की, मैक्स पीसी की बात कर रहे थे, वो जो disruption है वो कैसे यूज़ कर रही है ये youth या आप उसको कैसे facilitate कर रहे हैं as government कि वो लोग अपनी employability one और entrepreneurial ability इन दोनों को कैसे leverage करें या कैसे आगे लेके आएं? How are things changing from freelancing to shared economy to digital landscape से कैसे पाकिस्तान में एक change आ रही है जो आप देख रहे हैं? So shared economy, just for your information, is Uber, Careem. आप सब ने देखा है पिछले कुछ सालों में we are now more dependent on these services than any other probably. So कैसे आप इन सब चीज़ों को देख रहे हैं play around और from an HR perspective आप कैसे इसको लेके चल रहे हैं आगे?
Very good. I think so. I have two takes on this. The first one is sort of this big belief in.
So sorry, मैं ये bottom of the pyramid से आ रहा हूँ, मैं आपकी वो bureaucratic वाली part पे भी आऊँगा.
Very good. No, so I have two takes on this. The first one is that I'm a big proponent of people becoming entrepreneurs. I've lived in US for a few years, and when I came back, I always keep telling people that I can't find any excuse for people not becoming tech entrepreneurs in Pakistan. There's basically nothing that Silicon Valley has that Pakistan doesn't have. There's crap written up around it and so on and so forth, but none of that is true. You could become a tech entrepreneur in Pakistan. Nothing per se stops you from starting an Instagram from Pakistan, a 3-people company with lots of traction, no monetization, but $1 billion acquisition. That certainly can happen out of Pakistan. There is no cogent logical rationale for people not being able to do that in Pakistan. And just based therefore on that premise, we've started these incubators, etc. We're now starting a fund, we started an accelerator. And from that, we've also begun to see some of this. Pakistan now has a deal flow of about 300 to 400 startups, about a few thousand tech entrepreneurs. Some of them are beginning to look like people who could be really successful. So maybe Pakistan would get, a few $100 million exits, a couple of $1 billion exits. And this would totally change the way we look at entrepreneurship. See, in a country like Pakistan, and this may tread on some toes, but we are a post-colonial country, right? So a lot of people in this country, some years ago, about 70 years ago, started with some unfair advantage, which killed the spirit of entrepreneurship and turned this economy into a rent-seeking economy. So you needed a permit to do this and a permit to do that, etc. You were given large pieces of land for being loyal to this guy, the color of the skin or that color of the skin, and so on and so forth. So in most post-colonial countries, and Pakistan happens to be one such country, a lot of people started out with an unfair advantage. So they could set up large factories or could own large pieces of land, etc. Unfortunately, they became the role models, they became powerful in this country, became successful, etc. And hence, Pakistan doesn't have a Steve Jobs to look up to. Adopted son of refugees, grew up in dorms and slept in ashrams and on streets. Eventually thought of a good idea, couldn't complete college, but started a company that's the most profitable company in the world. We don't have any such stories in Pakistan. The stories our young people have to look up to are quite depressing. And largely all stemming from this unfair advantage that a lot of people were given about 70 years ago. Now, if you wanted to set up, let's say, a sugar mill in Pakistan, you and I cannot do it. For that, you need a couple of billion rupees at least, which means that if you go to a bank, you need to collateralize, about $500 million rupee worth of collateral. You and I don't have it. We don't have that unfair advantage. So therefore, think of the youth in Pakistan, 60% of the population here. They're in a much difficult situation than you and me or anyone else in this room. So they are very quickly losing hope. They see this huge disparity in income and status of society, where some people have all the privileges, all the wealth, and all the power in this country, whereas they not only not have any of that, they also don't have any hope of breaking through that. Their best hope is to get a government job, to get any recognition or any rights in the society. Hence, you see this glut of people wanting to get, government jobs, which are not well paying, but at least give them some permanence of job and some status in the society. For me, therefore, tech entrepreneurship, a kid who learns to code, this is a 6-month thing, learns to code, dreams up of a great idea, teams up with 200 kids, starts working in his garage to start a tech enterprise is certainly possible. And that is why there is so much excitement in Pakistan on tech entrepreneurship, because the young people in this country realize that this is their path to prosperity, which otherwise we've unfortunately closed down in this country. They can't go out and start a factory, they can't go out and buy a large piece of land, traditional businesses are very difficult to start, manufacturing is on a decline here, etc., right? So, but this gives them a hope to start something on their own and make it big. And that hope is priceless. It's important to hold on to that hope. So when I talk about tech entrepreneurship or I promote tech entrepreneurship, I do it because I think that's the best hope you can give to the young people in Pakistan. Pakistan produces 250,000 university graduates every year. The economy only offers 50,000 jobs every year. You have 200,000 people who go without a job every year.
Big gap.
And educated from a university, 16 years of education, 200,000 people without a job. What else would they do? So that sort of tech entrepreneurship is one thing that I heavily believe in, but you need to know technology to do that. The other big thing that we were just discussing, and you sowed this idea in my head, is this whole movement that we have towards supporting freelancing in Pakistan. As the governments and the private sector fail to provide jobs to 200,000 people every year who were graduating from universities in Pakistan, these kids figured out themselves that they could make money by going online, using the internet, and using platforms like the Elance and Upwork and Fiverr and Top Talent, etc., and started doing little jobs online for $5 a piece, $10 a piece, $100 a piece, a few $1,000s a piece, and became what the world calls freelancers. And these freelancers, as you just told me, are 1.5 million freelancers in
2013 ki figure hai.
Those are tera ki. Now, 1.5 million is, as you said, is the largest employer in Pakistan. The largest employer in Pakistan doesn't quite exist in Pakistan. It's the freelancing economy. These are kids sitting at home, working online and making money. And if someone makes, $10 a day, that's still quite a bit of money. That's 30,000 rupees a month, right? And that's good money. That's more than what a government job can give them, or any job that you would offer to a graduate coming out of a university.
और यही shared economy में benefit है, जो Uber, Careem.
And that's so disruptive. Recently we woke up one morning on the wrong side of the bed in this country and decided to ban Uber and Careem. And same time I was trying to advocate their case because I really want to promote such stuff in
वहाँ
Pakistan.
आपके लिए बहुत चैलेंजिंग हुआ. एक तरफ वो HR थी जो 60-70% हमारी यूथ है जो कुछ करना चाह रही है और वो आपने जैसे कहा उनको अनफेयर एडवांटेज नहीं है, और दूसरी तरफ वो लोग थे जो आप बात करें कि परमानेंसी ऑफ द जॉब में है और सारा कुछ है, एंड दे वर चैलेंजिंग दीज. सो आई एम श्योर यू वर इन अ वेरी डिफिकल्ट borderline situation ke way to step forward.
Well, yes and no. Typically, I have the Chief Minister backing me up. And he's an incredible guy. You know, I'm not political, this is not a political comment, but I wouldn't have done this for, what, 5.5 years now, if it wasn't the Chief Minister. He's a very unusual guy. He really is an anomaly in the Pakistan's political system. He's less politician, more administrator. He's very driven, very hardworking. He's a very incredible guy in many ways.
Political differences aside, of course, मैंने आपके साथ projects पे काम किया, I really understand कि वो कितने passionate हैं in getting things done.
So typically I have him on my side, except that when this issue happened, he was traveling. So I couldn't communicate with him over BBM or WhatsApp or whatever we used to talk to him. And so he was traveling and I didn't know what to do. And there was this letter that the government had issued. So I called up Secretary Transport and asked him, why have we issued this letter without any consultation? And he said, I didn't issue it. I said, it carries your signatures. He said, I didn't issue it. So it was issued by his office without his consent. And that's government up close and personal for you. And then I came down very hard on this. Without knowing whether the government will back me up or not on this, I went to the media and said, no. We have not banned them. This is an internal memo that is leaked. It was an internal memo, but it was an internal memo written by the Transport Department to the police saying, please impound all Uber and Careem vehicles. And the police walas, who are smarter than both of us combined, had a very simple mechanism to round up these Uber and Careem walas. They would
order one and then block them.
They would take out the smartphone, call the Uber, and then impound it. And that just being smarter than both of us combined. And took me a little, and I couldn't allow that to happen because there was something good happening in Pakistan. The good thing in this is twofold. One, bringing large tech companies to Pakistan solves the last piece of the puzzle that I'm trying to put together currently, almost single-handedly, in trying to support tech entrepreneurship by making people come and acquire companies in Pakistan. Unless these tech companies in Pakistan get acquired, there's no exit point. We've spoken to the Pakistan Stock Exchange now. There's a small cap IPO, so people might be able to go to the market to raise money. So that's a liquidation event. But typically, it's an acquisition by someone else. So those acquisition opportunities don't currently exist. And Uber and Careem bring those acquisition opportunities. They've actually acquired a few companies already. So these Sawaris and Travelees and so on and so forth, they will all, inshallah, do well because there is exit opportunity for them. So that's one. The other big thing is...
ये हम फाइनेंस वाली कॉन्फ्रेंस की तरफ चले गए. So coming back to HR, आप ख्याल में अभी वैसे करीम और उबर में कितनी employment generate की होगी?
Well, no, I have real numbers, but they've asked me not to share them.
Okay. Rough idea in general.
About 20,000.
So 20,000. So there's no current organization in Pakistan जो शायद पिछले 10-15 साल से ऑपरेट कर रही है और उसके 20,000 employees हो.
That's right, but the level of employment is also incredible.
और flexibility कितनी है?
And when this whole hoopla was happening, I happened to travel down to Karachi. They had also done a similar notification, so I was fighting with that also. And in that, because I didn't have a Sarkari vehicle with me in Sindh, I would call Careem, and I just had that app, or मेरे पास credit card नहीं था तो मैं वो cash पे पैसे ले लेते हैं. तो I would call Careem. But every time that took a Careem within Karachi, I would interview the driver and ask him कि कितने पैसे बनाते हो. So the driver would go, that's how I understood the economy. He said, I am just a driver, I'm not the vendor. Right? The vendor is someone who buys the car. So I've not made the car investment, I just drive the car. And I make 30,000 rupees, 40,000 rupees per month. So people who are driving other people's vehicles in this shared economy model are making 30 se 40,000 rupees per month. If you own a car, and there were several who drove me around who owned a car, were making between 80,000 to 100,000 rupees. So that's, that's fantastic. That's wonderful, right? So this is serious employment. The other thing that
sorry, एक चीज add कर दूं. From current corporate perspective, that's a challenge to you from talent perspective, because talent acquisition becomes a challenge because ये सब लोग और I mean I met people who work in corporate companies जो क्या वो कह रहे हैं हम तो वो छोड़ें जी, ये तो बहुत बेहतर है, सुकून भी है, अपने टाइम पे हम चलते हैं, अपने टाइम पे काम करते हैं. So we need to actually up our game in the corporate sector to compete with these new disruptive technologies जो आ रही.
And I think the good thing about that was, and whenever I ask people, and the other question was, what kind of people typically travel with you? And it was largely females. Right? There's a huge female empowerment angle here. Because of the lack of good public transport in Pakistan, females have to travel in very despicable conditions. And when we were putting together the Lahore Metro bus, I remember myself and the Metro Bus Authority chairman at the time, Saptan, was a very good guy. We both argued incessantly that we were not going to make a pinjara for females in this bus. That's typically how buses run. They have this little pinjara for females, जिसमें वो अलग करके लड़कियों खड़ा करते हैं कि ये ख़वातीन का section है. What the hell? Come on. So we said no. There'll be no ख़वातीन का section in this bus. Khawateen can sit wherever they want, and the guys can bloody deal with that. And that's what we did for the Lahore Metro Bus Authority. But that's when I realized that, females have very few mobility opportunities. How do you go to work? How do you go to social events? And a lot of, this stems from not being able to just travel and go to a place. Taxis are difficult to get. You can't call them home. How would you get them, etc. Rickshaws families don't approve of. Then they are dependent on some male member of the family to bloody drive them around to go to work or for social activities. This is 50% of your population. So therefore, with Careems and Ubers, the big thing that has happened here, also in Saudi Arabia, is that there is a huge pendulum swing there, because this has finally begun to provide them an opportunity to be mobile. And everyone in Karachi told me that after 6 p.m. it's largely females just traveling. 9 a.m. in the morning going to work, females. After 6 p.m. social events, largely females. And Saudi Arabia is going through a similar transition there, where females can't even drive. So that, I think, is also a very exciting technology enablement, that you're actually enabling females with mobility opportunities.
Perfect. बिल्कुल. So ये तो हमने बात की bottom of the pyramid कि कैसे हम from an HR perspective in general public को government good कैसे ला रहे हैं. So I think I'll appreciate कि कैसे facilitation बहुत ज़रूरी है. So I think the government facilitation part in facilitating brands like Uber and Careem come into play is actually critically important. But एक और challenge जो आपकी hat, एक और जो आप पहनते हैं, वो है managing the actual bureaucracy जो HR of the government itself. So your experience के कैसे tech को आप use कर रहे हैं. So एक last part जो हम आएंगे जिस पे is the big data वाली side और वो वाली, we'll come to that later a little bit. But ये आप कैसे bureaucracy और इसको कर रहे हैं? Because जैसे आपने एक example ली कि वहाँ change लाना बहुत बड़ा challenge है. मुझे याद है जब मैं सरकार में काम कर रहा था, मैंने 2-3 साल काम किया, तो मेरा भी audit हुआ एक दफ़ा.
I do sympathize with you.
जी. So मेरा audit हुआ और मैंने कुछ procurement की हुई थी. उसमें एक कीबोर्ड भी था नॉर्मल, तब डेस्कटॉप्स होते थे. तो वो 101 कीज़ का कीबोर्ड था, मगर वो काउंट करने में कीज़ थोड़ी थी.
98.
तो वो मेरा ऑडिट ऑब्जेक्शन आ गया, क्योंकि उन्होंने कहा कि शिफ्ट
Now you know what I have to live through every day.
Exactly. तो उन्होंने कहा इस शिफ्ट के साथ की नहीं होती, पूरी 101 कीज़ होनी चाहिए कीबोर्ड पे, अदरवाइज ऑडिट पूरा नहीं है आपका.
Very good.
So just coming from that perspective, कि आप ऐसी माइंडसेट को from an HR perspective कैसे technology PITB play कर रही है with other government institutions and organizations to improve that in some way or bring change there, or a mindset change at least, if not a delta. Though I see that
just to earn your sympathies, a keyboard would be what, 3,000 rupees?
तब इतने का ही होगा.
3,000 rupees. My sector spend in Punjab is 6.5 billion rupees a year. So now imagine
I can
which
imagine.
country I'll have to run off to when the audit guys come after me someday, wanting to count keys on a keyboard. I see that coming, by the way. And that's just the way public sector, unfortunately, in Pakistan is. But I'll tell you what I said initially is that, one, the main engine that runs the government, it does not use any conducive HR principles to make sure that they actually perform well. They get a fixed income, an income that is much less than their fiduciary power or their influence in the government. So a deputy commissioner is very powerful in a district, very powerful. A DPO, the RPO, is very powerful in a district. Their salaries, between 60 to 70,000 rupees. They get a house short, they get a car, etc. But that's what you give them. They have to make decisions worth a few billion rupees in every fiscal year. So there's a huge mismatch in what is going on there. Two, there's no way to incentivize them. You can't give them a bonus. You can't give them a promotion or return promotion. They have to follow us, and so on and so forth. It's also very fickle. So they could be thrown to, Kala Pani whenever, and so on and so forth. So there's all of that. This is not conducive to anyone wanting to perform. So they're not self-driven, there is no motivation for them to perform, other than khuda ki khaufi, which is, कि कोई अच्छा काम कर लें, right? So जो भी काम हो रहा है वो खुदा की खौफी की वजह से हो रहा है. There is no HR principle being applied to government HR. In government HR, in just Punjab government alone, is 1 million people. Punjab government employs 1 million people. Our non-development budget is about 1.1 trillion rupees. So 1 खरब रुपए की budget है जो हम spend करते हैं maintaining this HR. And I've told you how motivated they are. इसकी downsides ये भी हैं. Now, a knee-jerk reaction is then to say कि इनकी
कोई disruption आई इसमें, कहीं आपने कुछ trial किया, कोई
experiment? No, so I'll tell you what is currently going on. So one knee-jerk reaction is to say कि इनकी तनख्वाहें बढ़ा देते हैं. That does not improve anyone's performance because an increased salary becomes an entitlement very quickly. Increased salary only serves to expand the pool of people that you can attract into a certain position. I'm trying to advocate कि कोई university professors की salary बढ़ा दें, इसलिए नहीं कि current professors कोई एकदम से like हो जाएंगे, इसलिए कि फिर मुख्तलिफ तरह के लोग पाकिस्तान आके research और professor बन जाएंगे शायद, तो उससे बेहतरी आएगी, right? So that is one way to do it. The other is to spin off a lot of government functions into corporate structures. What you can call them Section 42 government-owned companies. So for instance, Lahore is clean because the district government is not doing it anymore. The Lahore Waste Management Company does it. They have company statutes, they have company service rules, company salary structures, and no permanency of job. Right? So we are now employing corporate HR management principles in these corporations. And if you look closely, and that's why I say the Chief Minister is such an incredible guy, if you look at the Punjab government closely, the Punjab government is being totally re-engineered right now around corporate principles. So if you want to do filtration plants or clean drinking water, Saaf Pani company. You want to do city cleaning, waste management company. You want to produce power, new companies set up on corporate structures, corporate salaries, no permanence of job, incentives, all of that in place, right? And so on and so forth. Actually, Government of Punjab has 58 Section 42 companies now, autonomous companies, that are doing their various things and doing reasonably well. So one is to corporatize the government and spin off functions that the government otherwise shouldn't be doing. Two, there are things that the government should not do in a corporate mode or in a government mode ever. For instance, run an airline, right? We should not be doing that. For instance, run, and Musaddiq will, if he's still here, now sympathize with me, run power distribution companies. We should not be doing that. You agree? He agrees. We should not be doing that, right? This is something that the private sector should do. We should also not be running too many hospitals. We should work with the private sector, come up with policy instruments, because they have the accountability, nimbleness, and efficiency to run these structures much better than the government can do. We shouldn't be running too many schools also. We should only be running schools so that we can control the prices, the fees that the parents pay to the schools, but actually enable the private sector to do it, and so on and so forth, right? These are extreme examples, but they're better examples. You shouldn't be running steel mills, shouldn't be running railways, shouldn't be running airlines, etc., etc. We shouldn't be running power distribution companies. And you can see, every time, anywhere in the world, government has tried to do it. In the HR principle that I've just explained, it has backfired big time because the government is just not structured to do it. The government can only provide the regulatory framework and the enabling environment and incentives for the private sector to come in and do these things, and that's what we should do. So that's the big thing that's happening in the government. My job, however, is to introduce technology in whatever the government is supposed to do. We do a lot of monitoring platforms. We started, our first one was probably the most popular one also, was this framework that we made to monitor the dengue epidemic. When it happened in Pakistan in 2011, we had 23,000 patients in Lahore in 3 months. 352 people died. And we were told, every expert that came here, and we got experts from Singapore, they get dengue every year because of the climate. From Sri Lanka, they get dengue every year. And they told us that the next year will be worse because these Aedes aegypti mosquitoes lay eggs, and the eggs are very resilient to climate changes, so the eggs will survive. And you'll get a 3 times bigger epidemic in 2012. Guess what? 2013 was the election year, right? So not not the right timing for something like that at all. So, but it didn't happen, and didn't happen not because it didn't happen accidentally. The government of Punjab put an enormous amount of work to make sure that we prevent the dengue epidemic from happening. From tracking, geotagging every larva cluster that we could find in Lahore and other cities, every patient house was geotagged. We built early epidemic warning system that would give you 7 to 14 days in advance the exact location of the place where the outbreak is going to happen, so that you can mobilize teams and go and actually clean that up, and then verify whether the work happened or not. So starting from something like that to monitoring schools, monitoring vaccinators, irrigation inspectors, agriculture extension workers, tax inspectors, etc., etc. So we put in now very good monitoring regimes, and even though it's like boiling an ocean, so you wouldn't see an immediate improvement in teacher attendance in schools, but I know that that has gone up from 64% to 81% in Punjab. I know that the vaccinated attendance went up from 18% in 2014 to 93% in Punjab.
So that was a disruption, the tech disruption, just a transparency.
No, just so the evidence-based decision making. Exactly. So I think what Government of Punjab has moved on to is that what people like me, are continuously pushing for is that let's not make any decision without having hardcore data around it. So everything we collect data about, we present that data, and all the policies not driven based on hardcore evidence.
Perfect. Excellent. I think in the interest of time, I'll just open it up for a couple of questions. And happy to take any questions. Ideally, one from this side and one from this side then. Ji, please, sir.
So no politics on this, what we decided. I am actually totally apolitical. I'm as political as they come.
Dr. Arif, representing International Islamic University, my question is to both Dr. Saif and Dr. Musaddiq.
Musaddiq will answer questions when he gets his turn.
Yeah, well, possibly he can answer now as well. I think this is the most challenging time, especially for the governments, because technology is killing more jobs than it is creating. So my question is that both to Punjab, representing Punjab government and the federal government, what you are doing in order to build up this gap? Because the skills required in order to do the creative jobs are much different than what the people already have. Thank you.
So I think the technology is creating different kind of jobs than the ones we were trained to view as jobs. So for instance, I told you about freelancing. There are 1.5 million people in Pakistan who do freelancing online. So they have a job. They probably make more money than us. Actually, if you signed up on a platform called Top Talent, Pakistani programmers and Top Talent on average make $8,000 a month. That's certainly more than what I make. So that's just a different kind of job. Technology has enabled a different kind of economy. You take your car out and start driving it out for one of those shared economy companies, you'll be making a decent amount of money compared to working in an MNC in an entry-level position. So technology, I think, is creating a different kind of marketplace than we were trained to view as jobs. I recently read this in Forbes or someplace. They began to call this a gig-based economy, a task-based economy. Rather than taking up a permanent job with a 9-to-5 schedule and a monthly paycheck at the end of that month, you sign up for a life where your skills are monetized by tasks that are thrown to you. And though that market is very large, that's $1 trillion economy, from a few cents being able to click 2 images that look similar, to a few $1,000s being able to maintain someone's ledgers remotely, or do medical transcriptions remotely, or translate things remotely, or write some content remotely, or manage someone's schedule remotely, or design someone's logo remotely. All those jobs, I think, are being now put online through technology. And I think Pakistan, we're putting together these 40 eRozgar centers in Punjab now. We're training 10,000 people this year to become online freelancers from Punjab. I'm told KPK is doing similar stuff also. So we will get, this whole, we're sort of going to ride the freelancing wave. And I'm glad that we're doing it now. We are one of the first adopters as a country anywhere in the world who really, the government is putting in money and resources to set up these centers, these training programs, to train people, retool people, so that they can monetize their education, their skills online. So I think it'll just create a new type of jobs. You most likely will not be able to become a lorry driver 5 years, 10 years from now, because they'll self-drive. You'll most likely not be able to make a lot of money if your livelihood dependent on plowing a tractor in the fields, because they're going to self-drive largely, and so on and so forth. But there are a lot of things that this new technology will also enable. And I think that's an exciting world. And countries like Pakistan will certainly be better off with technology coming in, because the world becomes flatter as technology comes in, and more jobs and a bigger economy becomes accessible to us.
I think it's a level playing field, and I think the nature of jobs is changing. It's not just the killing of jobs, the new jobs being created as well. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Saab. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, in the interest of time, we've just taken one question. But I hope you're here for a while to take few offline queries as well. But thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Badr, and thank you, Dr. Umar Saif, for a very wonderful conversation. We could have continued, but certainly we have time constraints and we have other guests.